Louis Liebenberg.
Thank you. If you were looking for the court case number 864, statement is a cue number 1. And we get this Liebenberg. The 25th of November 2024, presiding officer. No interpreter required vision. Mr. Painter on behalf of number 1. The mission by the right to inform the court that Mr. Jordan is this matter on behalf of number 3 as well as 6. These here that the watching field number 1. We should furthermore data protection for the number 1. But before we start, I would like to inform the court on the previous occasion, previous magistrate made a ruling regarding the media that media are not allowed to film or take photos of the prosecution team or the defense team, and just like to read that under the defense line. Confirm that I'm still appearing on behalf of case number 1. For now, my instruction is that my mandate has been cancelled at this stage, and the case number 1 will proceed with his own bail application.
Yes, Your Worship. We've had deliberation. The problem is obviously dates. As I continue with my bail application, you'll see that it will be in the interest of the public as well as thousands of jail partners that I bring this application. I'm highly prejudiced at the moment incarcerated. Cannot communicate at all. And although the perception of the state is that everything is a legal Ponzi scheme and so on, there have been the rhetoric in the media for the past, it's for 2.5 years. Yes. 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 100%. You will have to be in the sense I don't understand. I'm not a lawyer, so yes.
What was explained to you that you don't have you can describe another you understand?
I understand. I would like to clarify something with the court. Is it possible that the next appearance, which is Thursday, that I could have somebody on the watch sheet, just to help them with some legal matters like the meeting today will be pretty much formality in terms of my own personal history and address and so on. And if I could be allowed that and do the evening.
Now, we talk to the first thing. It's still good on from the DPP of the section on 5, application and you only see that based on you, that you must produce the cost on the balance of profit, that it is in the interest of justice that you can be on that. You understand? You can do it by two means. You can either testify yourself on the oath, or you can have a witness mission statement on the oath. You can be anything to those two options. You understand?
I do understand, but that includes oral deliberation.
Not only for you can have a strong statement drawn up, and you can have the benefit. You understand that?
Yes, yes, Your Worship.
Furthermore, sir, you don't have to tell me now that unfortunately, you got any previous conditions, any cases, out of the upside, or you got the capability school to make violence for this, and when you must close up. Trying to do so, you can be liable to be applied to 2 years in prison. In lastly, teaching committees require their own court interaction, official affidavit, statement, and to implicate yourself in any deeds or to your prejudice, any evidence of profession, even if you catastrophic moments. All those evidence can and may be used against you in the subject as well. Do you understand? You understand? Now, in order to seek to provide application, sir, you must list the following proof of who you want to grant the statement what you want to do.
Yes, the final.
Your full name, do you see that the evidence you will be used, both in truth, help you, nothing else in truth, help you out? What do you want to say, sir? If you are full by
The state and the sort of around me, just a bit of a background before I get to personal detail and dealing with the high limits of late application. What's the time report really on a bit of a background? According to what I can see on the 59 charges that was brought against me and all fellow accused, it's quite clear the state is going with the kitchen thing. And I would say that the state is not even sure whether all these counts will stand in court. However, given that I would like to give the story a bit of a background in terms of how this all came about. I, with this envision, with a world lady, with a legal system, being also a law student that will come here to the court since the year 2000. This partly came about because I had a lot of business experience at the time that was negative. I had friends in the legal fraternity and especially in the academic world in Potchefstroom, where I saw that the law wasn't the law anymore. And if I can quote a very well-known advocate, Barry, that acted for Oscar, in his case, when I saw him around 2 years ago in his own chambers, he said to me, Louis, once the media has found you guilty, no judge in South Africa will find you innocent, not guilty. I'd like to just pause for a moment. If that is an indication that there's a possibility that the judiciary and our parliament has been captured, has it been stated? I don't know. There is a very prominent advocate making that statement, and I believe that I'm under oath. And my fellow accused, Walter Liebenberg, my attorney for plus minus 14 years, has been present at the time. I'm not sure whether I can call as a witness Walter Liebenberg. I am not sure at this stage whether all the other accused have given state witness. It would seem so from the way that we've been treated, me and my wife. However, be that as it may, in the year 2000, I, at that stage, was working as a legal consultant and later as a middle manager for Southern Life. It's a life insurance company formed about 110 years ago that was taken over by Momentum. I'm sure everybody knows. And during my time at Southern Life, I saw billions of funds being invested on behalf of clients, and the lies and deceit that was spread by banks and insurance and life insurance companies in this country. That was basically a bank and insurance company is a pyramid scheme. Exactly the accusation brought against me at the moment. The same thing would apply there, the pooling of funds, very selective payments to certain clients. And if the liquidity of a particular life insurance company didn't suit the managers of the fund managers, they wouldn't pay. The same when it happens during a flood or any disaster in this country from the short-term insurance point of view, there will be selective payments. The difference being between me, banks, life insurance companies, the JSE, is that I have a philosophy. And this philosophy entails that I say that the mineral wealth of South Africa and Africa belongs in the hands of the ordinary man, the ordinary citizen. That brings me into conflict with the Stellenbosch mafia. It brings me into conflict with so many of the 0.01% of wealth in this country. That is my personal view, and I'm sure that this court is interested in where I came from. In the year 2000, my wife left me. I was married. My children, my second year, law school at Borgtog University in 1984, 82, I started. I was taking in a Scrooge, a Christmas Carol, with Hannes Miller as a main actor in that specific play. You would see in my whole profile and also the experience in this court so far that I am not a person that doesn't say, first of all, what I mean, and I do it in a bit of an artistic manner. That is a bit of right brain that is at work. The lawyer in me, or not the lawyer, is, I just studied law. I finished the jurist degree at Potchefstroom, and I'll get to that when I get to personal information. But my information about law and my knowledge about law is very dismal. More life. My wife left me in the year 2000, and I got divorced in the year 2002. I told her that we will get divorced when there's nothing left. A bit of a fatalistic approach. As you might have seen in the state papers, I have been at times a gambler in my life. And so it can be seen that I only do high risk business. I have 2,000 videos that you would see on YouTube. In fact, you see has quite a bit of them. He's been one of my first enemies. But with respect, the fact of the matter is, all my so-called investors, which I would love to call JV partners, and the agreement as such has not been mentioned once in the papers of the state. Now, as far as I can remember, C.F. Stephen of all that contractual law in Potchefstroom taught us that the law of onboard and onstraf, in other words, for the moment, my English fails me. If our learned friends can help me with that, that the most important thing is if you offer something to a partner and it's accepted on those terms, that it would be honored by a court and the rest of the world
that there's been an agreement, whether it's verbal or in writing. In this case, throughout, from day one, the agreement has been in writing. And I've noticed that the state has very selectively chosen an agreement that the liquidators found at my house that said that we are both going to contribute towards this specific venture. But if you look at 98% of the agreements, then you will see that the agreement said that I, being an experienced person in the garment industry, also have some financial knowledge, being 12 years in Southern Life, a background in dealing with clients and their money, that I have the qualifications as well as the experience to deal in a manner that is prudent, talking to people. What has become very negative in the eyes of the media, sorry, check. What has been very prudent in the media is that I have learned, I have bullied, I have forced people, 44,000 people, in surrendering their own brain, their own capacity to understand whether they would like to invest with Louis Liebenberg or not. Secondly, being the person that I am, and also having a look at him and developing at one stage in my life in the year 2000, 2004, a clear moment, understanding maybe a bit more about the investment world than the ordinary person outside has. We are sitting with a situation, and that's why we call it state capture, we call it all sorts of other things. We are sitting in a situation where it's basically impossible for the ordinary person to get into the mining world, into the business world, only with Anglo-Americans. You have to be in this industry for 100 years, 150 years, as is the case with Anglo-Americans, the years, also tuiste, translate, and so on. In other words, you will have to be a very privileged person in the eyes of the community. Now that in itself makes me an enemy of the state. There is no way that we continue in this fashion for the next 150 years, whilst we are sitting with employment needs, unemployment needs, whilst we are sitting in Stilfontein, as well as the Northern Cape, with 90 to 95% unemployment, especially in the area where I grew up or not. So when you look at me, you must understand, yes, you are dealing with a high risk profile. You are dealing with a highly dominant kind of character, as you've experienced in court. I'm very expressive because I believe in pure democracy. I believe in the fact that our Constitution says that our citizens have the right to own this country. And that brings me in alignment. Many Afrikaners have been alienated and they don't like me at all, but there's a percentage of us who woke up to the reality that this is a new dawn. This is a new South Africa. And we cannot continue in the way that colonialism and all our ancestors has brought about a system that favors the rich and the wealthy. Now, I would like to address some of the counts here, and I would like to call some witnesses, but they're not here at the moment, and therefore it would have to stay over till Thursday. I thought at least to confirm my address. But what I would like to start with is just a very who is me. Now, you got an idea, but I would like to keep it with my ID number, 6405 23 51 44 081. You mentioned at the start of the proceeding that if I had previous convictions, I must withdraw that. I am not aware of any previous conviction, but I'll take you through the things that you might find on my police record. The first thing that you might find in the year 1991 is that you will find in the Springs District Court that I've been accused of common assault. I was at the time a manager at Southern Light, and at the incident of 100 years of that business, there was a party, and there was a scuffle between me and a consultant that was pretty drunk at that stage. And at that stage, his wife was pregnant, and in the office, he gave me a shot in the ear. And I warned him, and then later on, we became involved with a brawl. I was found guilty at the district court level by a colleague of mine, or not a colleague, but a person that studied with me at Potchefstroom. I then appealed. The person's name was Norman Barber. He was a consultant at Southern, and I was a branch manager at the time, initially a legal advisor and then a branch manager. So that took 11 months, many occasions when I appeared in front of the court. I appealed, and I was found not guilty on appeal in the Victoria High Court. I went on with a case of assault against him, and he was found guilty, and on appeal, he failed. So that was the one time I was involved. The second time I've been to the court has been with an Italian girlfriend of mine in the year 2012. I don't know whether I should mention the name for the record. I'm not sure about what is right and wrong regarding that one. Okay. His name is Pina Ferrante, part of the Ferrante family in Palermo, in Italy, as well as family on the East Rand. That specific case took from the 16th of May 2016, not 2012, sorry, Your Honor, 2012, and that case concluded on the 19th of October 2019, 77 appearances. Pretty much destroyed my life. I was out on bail initially. The magistrate had put me on the bench in Springs, and that was the regional court. I'm sorry, not the district court. I think they upgraded it to a regional court. I'm not sure. The record can say that. And in that period, I, as I say, appeared every single time, 77 appearances. And I did go overseas during that time and returned. Initially of 2,000 rand. The advocate at the time was Advocate van Bankvaart, and why I chose and instructed Attorney Virgin in the case of my wife, he has done the last year of that specific case. The case cost me in the order of 8 million at the time, and it pretty much destroyed me. It's also pertinent to note that Colonel Rivera from the BPCI chose to commence this investigation in. And for a moment, I need to stand still with that statement. Colonel Rivera is very well familiar with his brother. He died of detective in a market. His name is Leon Liebenberg. He stays in Elizabeth Bay in the same street as my production manager at the mine in Pointas, Borgtog. And they know one another very well because they frequent the local bar and the angling club. There's not many things you can do in a market. You have to either fish or smuggle diamond, as in the case of Veronica from Dave's son, Rio. Now, I made that statement to say that there's a cause and effect. I made that statement further because there's a political affiliation. Because Veronica van Dijk, according to the state, was the person that also, in the Sunday Times of 27 October, a number of passages. But there's been 450 odd articles that passed last 2.5 years since Veronica and Dave really became involved in this matter. I would say that this smacks of nepotism. I would say that if you look at Namaqualand, that's a pretty secluded area where I spent some time, which I will touch on in a moment, during the years 1975 to 1979. 1979. My father was a pastor at the time, and I will get to that. The fact, and I would like to show just a bit of my background also. My father's mother's side, I'm a direct descendant of Ketua, the first Khoisan woman that we really know about that's been the translator for young from the in 1662. So when the year my father's and mother's ancestors came to the country, with that link between me and the Khoisan, I can feel it on a daily basis. And it's a strange thing because if you look at me, say, it's geometry coming from what people sell outside the Schwarzwald, Germany. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of Afrikaanse people, a lot of the Buddha, all of us. I looked at the and I saw the I've seen something else on I've seen unemployment in the motherland. I've seen a father reacting as it is right. And I don't think we've really done very well as a nation in the past 30 years to try and sort that. I have started and I have committed myself to this journey, a life journey of bringing reconciliation between people, not tokenism as the government of national unity is currently doing. Not at all. What I'm doing is on a personal, on an economic level to try and uplift people. The state would argue that if it's closing, I heard a lot of people, as a matter of fact, that was the first words that Colonel Donnie Bouvert told me, arrested me. You have hurt a lot of people. And my immediate reaction was, my dear Colonel, thousands of people that you don't talk about. In fact, Your Honor, since the liquidators started attacking on a very, and I will get to that, on a very evil way, Tarimix, the company, one of the companies, one of about 20 odd companies, since they started attacking it, and you will see that in the 381, the court in our next appearance, that they've never answered the question, why did you actually start recruiting JV partner Tarimix at least 2 months before the date of liquidation? In fact, the master of the Supreme Court in Maya King refuses up to the stage after 8 months to listen to the 381 and actually call those liquidators to book. What we've seen since was balaclavas, guns pointed at personnel. What you've seen is the capitulation of 44 of our employees in Johannesburg and the destruction since my incarceration in Namaqualand in Khoinas. I want to give you an idea, Your Worship. Although the state would like to convince the public, the media, and the JV partners creating panic, that I don't care, that none of us cares, none of the accused cares, I would like to state the following, just to get a picture in the court's mind. What we have is not only buying and selling, that was the initial way that we've conducted ourselves to a large extent. What we've worked towards was to now have, for the past 2 years, 2 months,
up to incarceration. We've employed 129 people that did not have employment, and they come from the Zama Zama groups, as it's popular called in South Africa. What I've done and what we've done as a group was to create a solution to the problem that's never going to get away, never going to go away in South Africa. And that is the access to the mineral wealth that the ordinary person needs desperately in order to employ people. What we've seen is a repetition of the formula, and the formula goes, I'm an Oppenheimer. I've been working for generations on the mines in South Africa because at one stage, my people came from England or Europe and came and took the mineral wealth of Africa. And that brings me into alignment with the radical economic transfer unit of the ANC, of the MK, of the EFF, and also bring me into alignment with reality that the Afrikaner in South Africa cannot continue in the old ways, in the old apartheid ways that we've done. Yes, I am a product of apartheid. I have been caught, and about 4 or 5 years ago, using the K word, the very bad K word. I didn't mention it to a person. I will 10 to 1, and I've received, maybe I need to mention that, by the Human Rights Commission. I appeared in Cape Town on this very same issue with Veronica van Dijk, and they've now transferred it quite ingeniously to Johannesburg again, and I have to appear there about the very same issue that I've discussed with Umsholozi, and Umsholozi's reaction was, Louis, we are all a product of the old South Africa. I was even calling myself the K word while I was at the island. Now, Your Honor, I will get back to this line of thought, but for the moment, I would like to stick more or less to a script stating that my date of birth is the 23rd of May 1964, and therefore it makes me 60 years old. It makes me a person that realized that I've gone through a lot in South Africa. It also made me realize that I have to make a difference in this very nation of ourselves. I'm a South African citizen. I've been that since birth. Just regarding travel documents, I have a valid South African passport. I use it currently as my identity document. Currently is the wrong word. I've done it up to the point of my incarceration. In fact, 2 days, if I'm correct, before my incarceration, I flew from Cape Town and landed at Johannesburg Airport, Oliver Tambo. And what I had at that stage, obviously, was my passport. My ID book was taken by the liquidators, as they've taken my clothing, my underpants, my wife's perfume, her clothing, and she had to fight, as you've heard, or your colleague have heard, for her own clothing in her rented house, which the liquidators and the DPCI made sure that after 3.5 years, the owner cancels. The same in my case, after a question of staying 8 years in the same estate. Now, my wife took my passport at that stage, and I believe that it was confiscated during my incarceration, but I'm not sure whether her attorney handed it over to the investigating officer or team. My previous travel, Your Honor, I've traveled quite extensively since the age of 16. At that stage, I was singing in the Transvaal Youth Choir, and we had some tours overseas. And also at the age of 16, I went on a tour to discover the world. Standard 8, as we call it. At that stage, I didn't see a naked woman, and I wanted to see some playboys. My father was a pastor, and he prohibited us to experience that kind of thing. So I did travel to Israel, Greece, Italy, Switzerland, France, Germany, Spain, at that stage at the age of 16. That's in 1980. The next time I visited Europe was in 1995 with the mother of my children at that stage, and we stayed during that time at a dentist friend of mine that's got 6 or so people from South Africa that he employs. In 1998, once more, I visited London, and the reason is I enjoy the shows, I enjoy that kind of buzz, and that was really for music, for theatre productions, and to attend concerts. I've also, since early 2000, traveled Africa extensively. I woke up, as I said, to the reality that Africa should be one, and there shouldn't be the borders and the separation. I was traveling this morning at the back of this police van, and there was a Zimbabwean. And this person, as a lot of people in Mampuru, do not have the means to get themselves out of the system. And although we are propagating that borders in Africa are demolished and we are one united Africa, I find all the time that people from Zimbabwe and Lesotho and so on that have a very tough time to make a living in their countries are not welcome in South Africa. And it's very hard for them to make sure. So I started traveling Africa, and specifically I traveled with Dr. Johan Engelbrecht, that is the church leader of the Institute of Africa. And I traveled to Kinshasa, to the DRC. What an eye-opener. I was crying for the first 4 hours landing there, because the only tar road was there for the president between the airport and the president's government. So for days I was crying, and I realized then what my calling was. My calling was really for the people of Africa. Being a white South African with a Liebenberg passport, having fought in just about every Boer war, my ancestors, as you would recall, also the Zulus at Blood River. Now, in 2007, as I said, I started traveling there, and that continued between the years 2007 and 2013. I always came back to South Africa, and what I then eventually did is I initially worked with Babu Katolondi. He is the chairman of the Diamond Board in the DRC on the 8th floor in Kinshasa. He also then became the governor of the Kasai Occidental province in Kananga. Kananga is about 1,000 kilometers east of Kinshasa and was supposed to be the capital of that city. 12 million people living without power and electricity, and just maybe a generator between 7 and 8 at night. That is where we're heading in South Africa as well. So I traveled extensively, and I also started operating a cutting and polishing works in the old Mutual House in Harare. So if people say that I do not have experience in the diamond industry, I beg to differ. What I do not do is I do not become a dealer. So in other words, I would not have the dealer license, but I would employ people and I would work with dealers that isn't approved. And I will show that later in my argumentation. Because that is also something that the state says, according to Article 20, I believe, in the Diamond Act, you cannot get other people to join this road of buying and selling diamonds and starting mines in South Africa and in Africa. In 2011 and 2012, I did that way, and also in 2013, I concluded an agreement with the then Minister of Trade, Minister Mpofu, and Billy Tanhira in Harare. And I also had some racehorses at that time in Bulawayo, Sporty Spike, and a number of other racehorses. I might just interject on an interesting note, Your Honor. I always had a dream as a small boy that one day I would sit next to Mrs. Oppenheimer. And it basically went like this. When in July 2006, I had Judge Jupiter and Lubricator, not to be confused with KY Jelly. We sat there at July. Now, some of you might know that the 13th race we run naked, totally naked. And I almost had the privilege to run next to Mrs. Oppenheimer, but at that stage she was about 92, with a hat looking like this, very prim and proper. And she said to me, "Young boy," and I mention this because it depicts the way that the state looks at the citizens of South Africa, and the Stellenbosch mafia looks at ordinary citizens sitting in this court and elsewhere in this country. She said, "My young boy, what are you doing for a living?" Now, at that stage, I just started very nicely in the diamond industry, and I had boats and so on the sea, like the Rupert's and Christa Visa has, Transex, Alex Core as well. And she asked me now, okay, and I didn't really know what to answer, because what do I answer to a monarch that had 150 years history in the industry that I'm trying to make a dent in? And she said exactly that. And I said, "Ma'am, I'm sort of in the diamond industry. I have a few boats." And she said, "My husband," and listen to this, Your Worship, "my husband also had something to do with that." Now, De Beers mining 15 million carats of diamonds in South Africa. What they do, Your Worship, is they pick, like they've done in Namaqualand, all the profitable areas. They destroy the community, as they've done in the mining area that I am sitting. And 95% of people, once they leave that specific area, is unemployed and back to where they started off. That is a message that South Africa, and especially white South Africans, do not want to hear. We do not want to hear that we've destroyed the souls of African people. We are still looking at BEE in this country that does the following. It gives a few select people an opportunity, and the rest of the people have no chance to actually enter an industry like becoming a CEO, or even more, a shareholder, a major shareholder in Anglo-American, De Beers, or one of those. We are well aware that our president and his family has got major shareholding in many, and he became, from a shop steward, he became a multi-billionaire in a question of 20 years, maybe less. But the question remains, what happens to the people in Namaqualand, in Kimberley, in the Northern Cape, and the rest of the country, where I am fighting for, saying the following: the Afrikaner had this privileged background, and we have really built very nice bank accounts. But what we haven't done is we haven't shared our knowledge, and we haven't shared our wealth with the rest of the country, creating this mess that I saw in the year 2000. Do I have relatives outside this country? Yes, my brother Jochanan Liebenberg, it's a Jewish name, as you can gather. He resides in England for the past, I would say, 9 to 10 years. And he stayed in Israel as well, in the Negev desert before that. Obviously, Your Worship, my relationship with my siblings, which is we 5 brothers, I'm the second of 5. And we are really the United Nations. My elder brother is in Melville. He's 2 years older than me, and he's a gay pastor. If that isn't an anomaly itself, but that is the way it is. Then I, with a bit of everything behind my name, and then Jochanan being a Jew. And then my brother that is in the a member of the AWB, Donnie, that's the 4th brother. And the 5th brother, soos hulle in Afrikaans sê, hy weet nie of hy vis of wat ook al is nie, but he is working on ships still at the age of 50 in the Mediterranean, and then he's back in South Africa as well. So we are really the United Nations in one family. My father died on his 60th birthday, the night of his 60th birthday, in the year 2001, and my age at the moment. I was born in Queen Vic Hospital in Hillbrow in Johannesburg. That doesn't exist anymore. I believe it's a hotel now. And my schooling started at Tebus. That was a temporary settlement. My father initially studied a number of years, I think 6 years, as a dopperpredikant in Potchefstroom. And then he stopped his studies, very much like I've done. And then he went to Wits to study civil engineering. And then at the age of 37, he went to Port Nolloth, where I started this dream that I'm busy with now, Forever Diamonds and Gold, a concept, Your Honor. And I do understand poker and all that, but they view this as an enterprise. I do honor that and I do understand that, but it's definitely separate companies in operation under the concept of Forever Diamonds and Gold. The concept is just purely saying, may diamonds and gold be forever in the hands of the ordinary people. That is basically the slogan. So I've been in Tebus just a few months. Then my father moved. He was a resident engineer at the Orange Fish Tunnel at that stage near Steynsburg. Then we moved to Pietersburg, where Saki also stems from. And I was in Grey College in grade 1, 2, and 3. And then during grade 3, my father decided that he wanted to become a pastor in the Happy Clappies and the AFM at that stage, and we moved to Lyndhurst. So I was in Lyndhurst Primary for a while. I was also in Paardekraal in Krugersdorp for a while. And then in grade, if I'm correct, grade 5, I was in Inika Primary School in Randburg, and eventually moved back to Grey College and then to Port Nolloth, where I completed Standard 4, in the old terms, 7 and 8. 8 in Springbok or Namakoland Hoërskool, as it's called. Right. So my tertiary education is a bit checkered. Your Honor, in 1983, I started B Juris at Potchefstroom University, and I just put a bit of a brag session. My grandfather's father was the founder member of the Potchefstroom University via Burgersdorp Theological School that moved to Potchefstroom. But as you know, a personality like mine found it difficult at Potch because you can dance, but you can't enjoy. So what I've done in 1985, 3 months before I graduated B Juris, I got married in that year, 1985, and also had my first child, Hilde Liebenberg, on the 6th of August, 1985, which then forced me to get out and go and work. I then told my professors, and may I say I've done pretty well. I was one of the few that got distinctions in Latin at that stage. People run away from that like they run away from mathematics. But I eventually, after hours, I did graduate in the year 1991. So all I have formally is a B Juris. And I studied then thereafter towards an MBL at UNISA. I only completed a year and a half, what other people would call an MBA, Master's Degree in Business Administration. At the SPL, it's called a Master's Degree in Business Leadership. I did not complete that. After that, I tried to buy a doctor's degree in London at a university. And why I call it that way, there's some qualifications overseas that isn't worth the paper it's written on. I paid £2,000, did the script for 6 months, and that's supposed to be, you're supposed to be called doctor, an absolute joke. So you cannot count that. What I would like to say to this, my work history was also sort of looking like that. In 1985, I started a concept, and there was one in Hillbrow at the time called the Milky Lane. I called it the Melkweg, a romerige genot. So in my third year at varsity, I started that, and it then very quickly became the spot in the town for students, and the town halfway between the university and the town. So I sold that in 1986 for quite a substantial amount of profit. That put me in a situation where I was looking for work. I then went to the municipality of Springs and worked under Tobias Kekilis, their legal secretary, as a housing legal clerk, as you can call it. I resigned in quite a spectacular fashion that I cannot mention in this court, but I developed a certain need to go to the toilet on the table of the town secretary. In 1987, I resigned in June and I joined Old Mutual. And initially, the idea was that I would be a legal consultant in the second branch in Springs that I've opened. But it then turned out that I'm a better salesman than I am a legal advisor. And I became a district manager at Old Mutual between the years June 1988 to 87 to December 1988. In December, I was headhunted by Southern Life, by Rich Marchant, and I was there for 12 years up to the end or the middle of the year 2000 when my wife left me. Typically, the emotional character, I then resigned, and although I had many, many houses paid for, also the building of Southern belonged to me, as I've done some development at that stage. And Peter Byers, I must thank him forever, the MD or the general manager at that stage of Southern, became a friend of mine, and he gave me the A-grade leases for Southern, and I could build the buildings and then get the A-grade lease. In that process, I became pretty wealthy. However, when my wife left me, and that's the very same that in the rest of my life, when my personal relationships fail, I tend to stop what I'm busy. And that has been the case then. I went to the street, although I still had 3 houses paid for and a building of 4.2 million, and only at that stage a bond of 32,000 rand. Which is, I would admit, and you can use that in a case against me, that is typical of the emotional character that you've seen in court as well. So I started developing those business premises in the year 1996. And because of my divorce at that stage, I decided to go to the streets. And I stayed 9 months in the casino in Carnival City and 9 months under a tree in Benoni across Christo's Cafe. That was not very cute because my father also died, who was my hero, died during that year, during that period, and it made me a bit of a destitute. On the 6th of August, the birthday of I was lying under a tree and crying bitterly because of what I've done to my life, very much like the prodigal son that had regrets. I always sing, regrets I've had a few, but then again too few to mention, but I do have regrets sometimes. So what I did is I hiked to Port Nolloth, hearing that God spoke to me. People often say that you can't hear God, but if your spirit is inclined to listen, you can. And I hiked to Port Nolloth on the 6th of August, on the 6th of December, about 2 months after I heard Pater Fontes go back to the fountains of your father. And I went to Port Nolloth, and I worked as a deckhand, but I've got a middle ear, and you would have seen that on Carte Blanche. I've got a middle ear issue. And I very quickly found out that I was just feeding the fish instead of being a deckhand. I got 10 rand per carrot at that stage, and it was really a dismal living. I looked at the situation and I said to myself, the only way that you can do this is because before those people, because they're undercapitalized, the divers, there's about 3 or 5 people on a boat like that, 17 foot to 17 meters, more or less. That is the size of the shallow marine mining in that area. I talk about that because that gave me the next step to go towards the mining that I'm currently doing. So at that stage, and I saw this, and I knew that I had to get capital for these people because they sit in Scotia Inn and Port Nolloth and just drink their lives away, and they're on drugs. whole community, basically, with exception of a few. So I then hiked to Cape Town, and 11 o'clock at night, on the 6th of December, no, a bit later, yeah, January 2005, I booked into the Table Bay Hotel from where I flew at the time that I was incarcerated now with the DPCI. It's like going another lap around. And I booked into, and at that stage, it was Annelien Kriel and Peter Bacon's place from Sun International. And I think because I did a bit of a gambling before, during that 9 months in Carnival City at Southern Sun, Sun International, they allowed me in, and I said to them, sorry, I can't pay now, I forgot my credit card, whatever the case may be. In the meantime, I didn't even have an ID book at that stage. So I went in and I phoned the concierge, and I asked them whether I could invite some people the Saturday morning to a seminar. And I invited 15 couples from people that I knew from Southern and all over. And the 15 couples came the Saturday, and I spoke to them for 2 hours about the concept that there's diamonds in the sea, and the mineral wealth of South Africa should belong in the hands of ordinary people. There was professors, there was also the treasurer of Potchefstroom, town clerk, and that became my second wife. She was my third investor in that. And I told them about this, and they gave me 3 million rand of checks. But the only problem is I didn't have an ID, I didn't have an address, because I was staying under Tree 5, branch number 3. So I went to the ABSA, and I convinced the lady there, the branch manager, beautiful Hollander, I convinced her to give me an account because I'm staying in room 444 in the Table Bay Hotel. I convinced her to give me a savings account, the only account the state will see that I've had over all these years. ABSA account 913-423-5453. I'm not good with money. I'm good with ideas. And I've realized that very early in my life, that I need to leave the administration, the banking, and the finances to people that I trust. The problem, obviously, Your Honor, is to find people that you trust. And that has been a dismal situation in our current operation as well. Because very often people see the short-term vision and not necessarily what I see and what I would like to see happening. So that was how I was introduced to the diamond industry. And our group at the time bought 11 boats at a value of anything between 3 and 6.5 million a boat. It made us also the biggest independent miner in the sea, in the shallow marine. It also made us the largest producer for Elixcore at the time, the diamond producer that belongs to the state, or at least the majority of shares in Elixcore. Our DPCI investigator's brother stays. Now, as I said, during that time, I did well for myself, but I got in a prospectus issued by the Reserve Bank at that stage, and also underwritten by PwC. I got 30 million rand of shares at the stage. If I remember, it was a Strydom at PwC at Pretoria, and also a Mr. van Staden, Charles van Staden, that worked under Michael Blackbeard at the Reserve Bank, that helped us put this document together. Initially, we were just separate companies, very much like we are at the moment. And eventually, the Reserve Bank came and they said, listen, you better put this formally together, issue a prospectus. We issued a prospectus, and at that stage, we had 1,534 people that invested and bought shares in the different companies. And eventually, it was called Wealth for You Mining and Exploration. I also went in the year 2007 and attempted to list this on the alternative investment market in London. We had Doug Braddock and Cranbrook, the advisors, the nominated advisors, as well as Alex Cranbrook, the barrister that at that stage represented us in London. So we tried to do it the right way. However, exactly the same happened then that is happening right now. It became a media frenzy. David van Rooyen, as well as Helena Wasserman, whose father was a consultant with De Beers at the time, started writing in the Sunday Times, not the Sunday Times, the report, the Afrikaanse. I've concentrated mainly, as you will notice, on Afrikaans people. The state will argue that they are gullible and therefore it's easy to convince them. I would beg to differ. I think the Afrikaners are 10 to 1 the most difficult nation on the face of this planet, even beating Israel. But my address at the moment, Your Honor, is not a tree anymore. It is 24 Meerkat Avenue. Now, I stayed there since the 1st of December, just a rectification on your papers. You say it was November. I stayed there. It's the 1st of December. It's neither here nor there. I stayed, I think, at 16 Black Eagle, but 16 might be wrong, up to that point for 2.5 years, and 1.5 years before that on the estate just opposite. So this is Aqua Vista, just opposite Kungweni estate. So I've been staying there about 9 years, where maybe a bit more, where I'm staying in the same vicinity. I do believe, however, and this is how it happened, Your Worship, is that the liquidator, and I've got a lot to say about him, but this is not the forum, the liquidator sent some of his agents 6 times to that address. And every time, obviously the neighbors in the Ladida complex, as well as when I stood as independent candidate, and I will explain that very briefly, is that Msholozi asked me to form a political company or portfolio, and I stood as a candidate in the last election. And the reason why is because MK at that stage were not sure that they would be recognized by the ANC as a party. So I formed this political, not a party, but stood independently. I did form an independent political party in Namaqualand. I canvassed for 2 weeks, and I got 3 candidates into the local election just 2 years before that. But from that's just to answer the question why I stood in the election, I did that really for MK, but once they've stopped me, the electoral committee in certain of the provinces, I had to not abandon, but I had to, once the MK came right with their specific registration and the drama with Kumalo and all those people went away, Msholozi could continue, obviously, with his political party, and thank God for that. And yes, the state, I did fund the political campaign of the MK. Not in totality. Putin also came to the rescue in the end, but the last one I did fund was Orlando Stadium and Kimberley, and the MK can vouch for that. Did I fund them in totality? Did I fund all Msholozi's legal battles against President Ramaphosa and the sellout part of the ANC? No, I did not. The problem for me, Your Worship, is I trusted Saki. I trusted other people. I trusted a lawyer that was my friend for 14 years. And we did transfer state 17.5 million money from Zircon, that's quite right, and 17.5 million from Taribix. That was 35, and I did give Walter in the order of 23 million rand cash. So it was 105, not 100 million, 105 million transferred via EFT to Walter Niedinger trust account. And the reason for that is it became very apparent. Let me run that through the court for your benefit. The very first hiccup that we got was during the month of September in 2020. Remember that we started the Tarimix on the 9th of March, not the company. I also had the company as a shelf company in 2011, but then started really working elaborately and specifically on Forever Diamonds and Gold, and then obviously agreeing with the investigation that currently is hanging from December 2019, a few months latitude on that. So started the 9th of March, and by September, October, this, what's it called now, FIC, has stopped intervening, basically the Afrikaner mafia in Stellenbosch. They told them, listen, on a call, listen, man, be careful of this man. He's again doing what he's always been doing, liking well for you. He's now getting money again, and just watch him because he's become big. He can become big if you leave him. So they didn't leave me, and Capitec, the Afrikaners, froze the account with 72 million rand in during September or October 2020. A couple of months or a bit more of since we started on the 9th of March. We won that case. And your worship, this is a theme that you will hear during my discussion this morning, because it really is a discussion with you. We won that case against Capitec. They released the money. At that stage, Dr. Corrie Kloete, that was our public accountant, advised us that because of the structure of the company, we must rather initially open up an account in Ronald, accused number 2's name. And may I say, I would just like to state this to the state. I take responsibility for the things that I've had control over, and also the dream of putting the mineral wealth in the hands of ordinary people. Accused number 2 and accused number 9 was in relationship with me. And because we are biblical people, and in a sense, a bit traditional, it is a question of my word counts. And I say what I want to achieve, and they follow. So I want to state for the record that accused number 2 and accused number 9, and the fact that accused number 2 had hundreds of millions through her account on the advice of Dr. Corrie Kloete, because he said that Capitec does not have business accounts. But a lot of our customers, a lot of our investors are with Capitec. In fact, the biggest amount of people, 23 million people in South Africa, banks with Capitec. And it's more accessible regarding cost as well. He said that Mercantile would take over Capitec, and that it would make business sense to have our account at Capitec, but you can only have a personal account at Capitec at that stage. So that was the reason why Ronel, accused number 2, took the front. And a lot of people, and also the media, mean or say that I have, Jana said that Jana van der Merwe, that wrote scores of articles, in fact, 400 articles on the board, says that I've thrown the accused number 2 and accused number 9 in front of the bus. And therefore, I put on record that I take responsibility for what they've done, because they've been there in that position as my proxy. I've always said that in the 2000 videos and so on. For the rest of the accused, I cannot say that, because they had their own accounts and I did not have access to it. It will sound strange to the people here, but if you go to our board meetings, if you go advocate for the state, if you go to all the records, you will find that there was major upheaval in our office, because I did not have any control over the bank accounts. I only had the Marauder house that I paid for, and Mafisa Mining that I paid 7 million for EFT, 3 million in cash, and Marauder 7 million plus cost in the order of 8 million. That was where the control was. A lot of the transactions initially took place in cash. And let me put this on the record. If you go, there's 800 dealers in Johannesburg doing diamond business, and you can go and find out. My father's been a good friend of Ernest Blom. I delivered diamonds to Aaron Blom. LCB Nanil's husband in Stellenbosch. We delivered from concession 10 and the C. We delivered diamonds to them. What to say is that because of the fact that I'm a negotiator, and that is my strong point, I stand here this morning without any preparation, for example, except a few pieces of paper. I have maybe a bit of a talent talking to people. But the fact of the matter is, I'm very bad at administration. I'm very, very bad. I need a very good team that I can trust around me, like Jared sitting there. I need people around me that would take responsibility for finances as well as for the goodwill of the companies that we do. So I've done that. My marital status at the moment, I'm currently married to Desiree Liebenberg with identity number 7312260153. I'm sure you have it on record. We are married, anti-nuptial contract, but with the accrual system. And our marriage was concluded on the 15th, sorry, she'll hate me for this moment, 15th of October 2022. The worship, I know that is not the subject of discussion, but on my wife, as I've just stated, is the first woman that I've really felt that I'm in love with. That is also the woman that made me stand here, and because you didn't have 2 dates on your calendar, that I was prepared to stand here on the first day of this very bail application. Because I would like to spend the bit of money that we have available, and it sounds terrible, but the state would know that all our accounts are frozen. All our accounts are frozen. We had 2 accounts still going at the time of our incarceration. There was about 700,000 in the one and about 270,000 in the other. And I need to just come in here and explain what has happened during the incarceration. I would like to deal at this point, and I would love to call General Mbuela the head of the Hawks, and obviously that will be for a later date. This bail application will not only take 2 days, Your Worship, with respect, because there's quite a few witnesses that I would like to call during this specific bail application. Inter alia, General Mbuela, that I've had contact with since September 2020. The record will show that on my phone that the DPCI has taken, as well as my wife's phone, that this is true, that we've been in constant contact with the DPCI. Your Honor, during this time, I've had access to hundreds of millions. And not at one stage, although I traveled overseas during this time that I will touch on now, have I ever thought about staying away from South Africa. As a matter of fact, Your Honor, which I regrettably have to report, that Mr. van Heerden has not canvassed correctly. And the reason is that he did not consult with me, as I've pleaded with, for 2 weeks. And he did not consult with my wife, sitting in prison at the moment in Pretoria. Did not consult. That was basically, I believe, what has let my wife down. But let's not speculate on that. What I would like to say is that during this time, since 2021, and why is that date important? I was shot by 5 policemen and 3 taxi boss owners. That is being investigated by Captain Mabena at that stage of the South African police. And how this worked was the following. I was driving from the hotel at Emperor's. My girlfriend at that stage, accused number 2, not at that stage, basically. I must be quite frank with you. I started a relationship with Desi, in other words, accused number 9, while I was still staying in the house with Ronel, although we didn't have a romantic relationship for 3 years. So why that date is important is when I was traveling to get to the curfew time of 10 o'clock at 24 Meerkat, traveling from Emperor's Hotel, I saw that there was a lot of flickering behind me, and I was at the time on the telephone with Desi. And then it then panned out to be that it was police that followed me from Emperor's. Saw, normally, Your Honor, I have a lot of cash on me, and that is something that has been discussed many, many times by the state, and I'm not willing to say that that is not true. Our president does that, the best of us all at Pala Pala. I'm sitting with 2 groups of people that has been charged because they stole the money at Pala Pala. And I'm sure that they would come and witness to the fact that our president does not have a problem if Louis Liebenberg has a lot of cash that he travels with. What goes for the goose goes for the gander, and that is also applicable in this bail application. We'd like to understand why the state would grant my previous girlfriend that had hundreds of millions through her account, and my wife that is acting as a proxy the past 3 months, so that the responsibility towards the 44,000 or so joint venture partners should be met and the business can continue, not the trading as such. I would like to point that out, and I will get to that in a moment. I do not understand the disparity, because as far as I know, there's a constitution, and according to that constitution, we have the right to freedom. So my wife definitely had the right to freedom, and unfortunately, the reason why her attorney didn't apply his mind, which the state must agree has not been done. The state has said that our attorney, on behalf of accused number 9, did not answer even the questions or the charges that was related to a specific charges. Sorry that I'm breaking a breek 'n lansie for my vrou that is not here, that is really in dire straits at the moment. My dependents, I don't have minor dependents. I view my dependents as 4 people because I'm married to my wife and I take her children as my children, and I've done that from day one. So in my eyes, I've got 4 dependents, but from my own blood, Hilda, that's 39, and my daughter, that's 36. In South Africa, it is a reality that a lot of people, and my daughter, Hilda, is married to Professor Pelser, Paul Pelser. He was the Transvaal manager of the rugby team from Rao. So Pelser, his grandson, is Hilda's husband, but he's got 2 degrees, master's degrees in industrial psychology and psychology, and he cannot get work. He cannot get work. So the state will see that I've been looking after my daughter, not for the sake so much of the fact that he doesn't get work, but for the fact that I've got grandchildren, 3 grandchildren, and my daughter's got cancer. And I view it as my responsibility to look after. Marita's husband is Ernst. He's a CA. They live in Plettenberg Bay. She's 36. He's around 40. And he worked for us for about 6 months as a CA until a lot of these enemy groups. One of the things that I would like to discuss just briefly after this, enemy groups that's been formed by Veronica van Dijk and proxies of people that is against the work that we do. In terms of occupation, I gave you a whole rundown, but I would like to that, as far as I know, Your Worship, I need to say to you, you know, in the section that I am, I've been moved 4 times now, and they told me that I'm going to CMAX, maybe because of my big mouth, but I'm in single cells at the moment, very much like our President Madiba. Single cells, I let out 3 to 4 hours a day to roam around, make 5 minutes a phone call. And may I just stop here, and please, if the state can just indulge me for a moment, because I'm going through that, and just try and explain how difficult it is to come and stand here from that type of environment. I've already mentioned to the court that I'm a bit of an enemy of certain people, and also the Minister of Correctional Services. And when I walked into the head of the prison, there was a call as well as an email that told the head of the prison, at the time he's now being let go, Smith, that they must give me a hard time. And I must be honest, Your Honor, it's something that Madiba said, and it's true. If you want to see how South Africa looks and why I'm fighting the fight I fight, you just have to go next doors into that area that I just came from. for some of the reason, there's no paint available. There's no lights. I can't even look at the papers that I'm trying to read in there. The same is more or less true of the prison. The same is also true that we are seen as not the people that's been sentenced already. And that is the idea that I got every time that I go into this court. We are being escorted by the police at 180 to 200 kilometers an hour with a bakkie and pop rivets at the back. And you're dreading for your life as you get to court. I wonder why that is necessary, but that is part of the whole incarceration environment. If I run out of ink for a pen in the middle of the night, I can't get a pen. I can shout until I'm blue in the face. I've also been raped before in Modabie against the wall, bleeding without any help. I've now been suffering of gout and arthritis, and I had to go on the 18th of November. I had to go for a neck operation with Dr. Elbrich. And I've been postponing because of the situation. And the food that we are getting is so dismal. It's just about no protein that you get. And you will find that all people incarcerated losing 10, 20, 30 kilograms, and nobody cares. And I've been pleading to change my diet because I've got arthritis. And as I stand here, I'm in really bad pain. And just because of the power of my brain. So South Africa, your worship, is in terrible need. There, June 2021 happened in KwaZulu-Natal. That will happen more and more. That is why people after COVID has been in desperate trouble in this economy. And the last thing we want to do is destroy good business. I've been part of this director, as far as I know, of Tario Part since 2011. But may I say that that is dormant. The Tario Mix, that is in final liquidation. And may I just be very naughty and tell you how this liquidation came apart. What happened is that we got a day before the time. And so I already indicated to you, and obviously you are for justice, and we are all. I got served the papers on that the liquidators knew that I wasn't staying at since 2015, a farm in Liebenberg. And therefore, the liquidators, in all their wisdom, decided to deliver the papers there ex parte. That should be something that should only happen in extreme circumstances. But it does seem as though the only way that the liquidators, mafia in South Africa, if I can call it that, are operating at the moment, they are doing one after the other ex parte applications. Where does the Audi Alteram Partem rule come in? When do we really have the right to oppose what they do? By the time that you oppose, your business is destroyed. And it happened exactly. And your worship, please allow me just the next freedom of expression regarding the captured situation our justice system in South Africa is. And I will illustrate it by witness. I will not compromise this court. However, I would like to state to you. Okay. Yes. Well, your worship. Obviously, I don't want to end up in an argument with you. What I can say is that is what a large percentage of South Africans are saying. But can I say this? And this is important, your worship, because I'm going to call witnesses to that effect, that will witness to the fact that a lot of our problems stemmed from the initial liquidation application that was there brought on an ex parte basis. But if you don't want to allow it, that's fine. But I will then bring it into calling witnesses that they can vouch for, if that is okay with you. Thank you, Worship. So, Telemix, obviously, and Telgo well, I believe I'm a director there. Northern Air Taxi, that was aeroplanes that I had in partnership with other people before, but is not the case anymore. Island Prince Zuid is a farm that I gave Walter, needing a 5 million rand in cash to buy in Namaqualand. That's about would say about 30 kilometers south of the Groen River, and that is on the same line as Gurries, Eureka. Eureka is a white town, and as everybody would know, I've been supporting not only white towns, I've also supported black towns, people in squatter camps and so on. And the reason why I think it's important to bring it in here, the worship, why I supported that and bought that specific farm was to supply water to Gurries. The Gurries town and municipality does not have water, and it's a very bad situation. So the idea was to put up a plant and to give them water from the sea that is purified with a 15 million rand plant that we bought partly but could not complete. So that farm is, I think, in the order of 3,500 hectares, and it's got 1 kilometer of seafront. Namterra Properties, I must be honest with you, sitting in incarceration, I have not got access to internet and phones, and I've got a 5-minute call that I can make. I could not verify exactly whether that property, what exactly the properties are that is registered in that name, but I'm sure the state would have done their homework on that. Marauder House, that is the head office, if you can call it that, of Tarimix, and that is in Kempton Park in Rhodesfield, and that is 100% in a company that I have 100% shareholding in. So the value around 8 million. The Waarheid, that is, it's very important to distinguish between the companies. There's the Waarheid Radio, and there's the Waarheid Media, that is basically an online newspaper. And the Waarheid newspaper is the one that I'm a director. The previous director died a few months ago of cancer, and he was also the editor of that newspaper. Mafisa Mining, I initially started, and this is important in terms of timelines, before the December 2019 investigation started, but I only Hello Mining contract working at Mafisa Mining around about the mid of 2019. A lot of my work at that stage has entailed helping the 23,000 people that has worked at De Beers and Transex, also at De Beers Kimberley, and on the West Coast, Alexander Bay, Kleinseer, Port Nolloth, and so on, and helping that 23,000 people getting on their feet. I've spent about 9 million rand during that time, helping those people basically with food and so on. The state would argue that I've done illegal trading with the diamonds. I have not. I always had, there was a stage where the minister, Olifant, Deputy Minister of Minerals and Resources, came and he said, listen, you can work here on this site at Kleinseer, and on the other site, you can stay. And then De Beers changed their mind, and that's where I really seriously got involved in fighting against De Beers in the mines on behalf of the, let's call it then, the Zamazamas of the artisanal miners in Namaqualand in the Northern Cape. So that has been, as far as I know, and Your Worship, allow me a bit of latitude, I have not had access to computers, and this is the reason. Your colleague in Cullinan, Magistrate Engelbrecht, in all her wisdom, saw it fitting to incarcerate my lawyer on the 31st or 30th August this year. The reason is she saw that he stole money from the trust account. It was an amount of, I'm talking in a correction of the amount of 1,030,000 or 1,090,000. That is of the 105 million that and I don't understand it, that the magistrate of Cullinan Engelbrecht can be the chairman of the 418 inquiry, as well as the magistrate that locks him up because he refused to give statements to the 418 inquiry. But be it as it may, to me, it's a bit of an anomaly and a conflict in interest. But what has happened then, and why this is relevant to this specific bail application, is Walter Niedinger, after 6 days in incarceration for this 1,030,000 later. And he said, enough, I can't sit, my whole practice is going under. Niedinger, born victim, and Magistrate Engelbrecht. And the deal basically said, listen, okay, you've been a naughty boy, you stole trust money, okay? But I'll forgive you, as long as you can sign off on the 7 companies. No problem at the moment. Walter was my proxy on 7 of the companies that he signed off on. And signing off meant that he resigned, and he wrote a long letter and a whole video of an hour and a half that should be in the state's possession at this stage on my phone. And this video entailed basically, Louis, listen, man, we've been friends many years, and you know what? I was in a fix. My wife, as well as my fiance, as well as my previous wife, got very angry and upset, and I had to make a deal. So, Your Worship, the state will have to help me, or I will call a witness to try, and I don't know whether I can call Walter. I suppose he will be an accused, but I don't know whether he's going to be a state witness, and I'm in the hands of the court regarding whether Walter Niedinger can come and actually deliver and become a witness in this specific bail application. I'm in the hands of the court, but you don't have to answer that now, Your Worship, but I just mentioned that I would like to call Walter Niedinger as one of the... Okay, 100%. So, Your Honor, that brings me to, I think, the most important element of our mission, my bail application. And I see it as more as part of the group and the continuation of the group. Your Worship, the state in the whole case, up to now, the 59 counts in this specific bail application, very briefly, if ever, just by mentioning Mafisa Mining and by mentioning West Coast Resources, mention the actual reason why we are in business. And why that is relevant is that at the time of incarceration, the business rescue practitioner of Christa Visa, West Coast Resources, which is basically 67% of that belongs to Transex. For 7 weeks, the business rescue practitioner refused that we deliver according to contract to the only person that we can deliver diamonds to, which is Basil at HOD, Hall of Diamonds in Bedford Center. I mention that, Your Honor, because if the state wants to proclaim that there is no continuation of a solid structure in business, as they do in most of these charges, except maybe the racketeering argument, although they can go for that as well. I must be honest, I don't understand that, the racketeering, and I will have to consult a bit more on that. But what I can say is that there's a mine of 89 full-time employees. There is artisanal miners that has been contracted 129 million, thinking in millions, and I'll get to the millions now, 129 of them. And there was around 35 people in Rhodesfield that is dependent on this company, be it the Varade Media, radio, or the administration of Karimix. And then obviously the other companies that will be mentioned. So, Your Worship, to incarcerate a person because it has become impossible to deliver diamonds according to contract, the only avenue that we could deliver, and then the following happens. Now, Your Worship, on the 19th of September, a month before the time, I phoned General Humbawela, the head of Dani Brewer, Colonel Dani Brewer. And I will get back to a few other occasions. But on the 19th, we have an 11-minute discussion, which is on my phone. I've got a copy of most, and we are going to apply, obviously, to get the content of my and my wife's phones so that we can at least put up some effort in this specific defense of ours. But the state or DPCI at that stage, in collaboration with the liquidators at the 418 inquiry of Daisy Liebenberg on the 19th of September, are preventing us to deliver according to contract, a legitimate business contract where there's diamonds mined and sold since the 1st of September 2022. We have delivered, and the state spoke about 13,000, if I'm correct, talking under correction the other day. 4,600,000 or 600 million, whatever rands, 4.6 billion got in. And we paid out 4.5 billion, 100 million difference. There's mines, there's workers, there's assets, buildings, all those kind of things. We've paid out 4.5 billion, and the state comes with an allegation and account like theft. Now, Your Worship, it is true that our projections was anything between 10% and 100%, 110% sometimes. I need to explain that to the state. If you would have, and I will call a witness to this effect, a very well-known diamond person, and they will tell you that there's an 8 times factor in the diamond industry from the point that you mine the diamond up to the point that we sold the diamond. Now, at the time of our incarceration, we concluded an agreement to buy Arthur Kaplan jewelers in Menlyn. We could not, obviously, go through with that, and that was money that was then frozen at the time as well. So the idea was all along to mine and be the middleman and also sell diamonds at an 8 times factor. So you can buy a diamond at $100 a carat, and you will find that in the retail industry at $800 a carat. You can maybe think back to your wife's diamond ring that you bought her. Diamonds are a girl's best friend, and what they do is you buy it at a question of, let's say, for a carat, you pay 50,000 Rand if you go to retail. But if you go directly thereafter, very much like BMW and Ford, except for Toyota, if you go to the dealership straight away, or through the jeweler, or to the pawn shop, they will only pay you for the gold on that ring. So in other words, you've just paid, and surely people are not mad doing that, they're just in love, and you pay 50,000 Rand, and you would get 500 Rand or 1,000 Rand if you go and sell it on a quick sale, on an asset sale at a jeweler or at a pawn shop, wherever you can buy. So it is true that if you don't know the diamond industry, that I suspect some of the members of the state do not, and you can't expect them to be in the diamond industry for many years. The fact is, it might be not understandable that you buy a diamond for $100 a carat and you sell it for $800 a carat. And that is what happens every day in South Africa. So when we say that, and we call it blue sky, when we say to a person that we do expect, we buy this diamond at $100 and we sell it at 500 or 200 or 300, it is not exorbitant. But what you need to try and get the whole cycle of the diamond business, which we have done. Our last and our final hurdle to overcome, apart from a visa, because we couldn't mine enough, it's too deep, it's too expensive, we had to go to West Coast where there's a lot of diamonds, and we concluded an agreement, a mine management agreement, and got, may I say, for the 40 million, I need to say this to the state, for the 40 million, we got a 160 million Rand rehabilitation fee that is sitting at Constantia or at Sanlam. I'm not sure, one of the two. We also got the pre and the post finance that was done in Christo Visa's liquidation that then became a business rescue practitioner. May I say that I, at the time, of the liquidation offered 200 million to buy West Coast Resources, and Chris Kimber and Christa Wiese and Marco Wenzel then declined the offer. At the moment, as we sit here and stand here, they will not get 200 million. It was more realistic to pay 40 million for West Coast Resources. Initially, they wanted 8 million, and in negotiations, it went to 40 million. I say that because we have mined in the order of 300 million rand of diamonds since the 1st of September. The best that any operator and miner has done on the West Coast Resources in the newer phase after 2008, when the diamond price fell up to now, Your Worship, since 2020, since we started this business, the diamond price fell 75%. And for people that don't want to believe it, you can just Google the diamond price index and the charts for the past 10, 15, where you can put the periods in, the term in, and you will see what I'm saying is true. So the state argues here, and I'm touching on a bit of the merit now of this case. The state argues that we blatantly lied and misled the public regarding the expectation of the diamond price. We have paid out for, and I don't see the media reporting on the 4.5 billion that we paid out. I do see them reporting that we have taken 4.5 billion rand off people, and that is an absolute lie. We have taken 4.6 billion according to the state's argument. I believe it's 5.5 billion, and that we paid between 5.1 and 5.2 billion out. But the PwC report that a lot has been made of, Your Worship, is not a conclusive document. As a matter of fact, it is qualified. And I think that's very important from an accounting perspective, that if you bring a PwC report, and I will give the background to that, that was done by AE Switch, by Tian Lombard, you bring that to the court as though that is the be-all and end-all. It is absolutely not true. A bit of background, what is discussed also the AE Switch. Your Worship, AE Switch is run by Tian Lombard. Tian Lombard is a convicted fraudster and criminal. He was incarcerated and imprisoned, sentenced for 8 years, or he sat for 8 years and then made a deal with the state. I don't know. I think his initial imprisonment was 15 years. But I'm talking on a correction. The state would be able to supply that information. Now, one of the things that I see in the diamond industry that's been outruled and outlawed has been entrapment. Entrapment. We've seen that very much in the old, movies of diamonds in South Africa, and also gold, which is ridiculous because the diamonds and gold should belong to every citizen in South Africa. But let's honor the laws. We've got a situation in the diamond industry where people are seen as illicit, and in the minds of all people, it is illegal. But that is not the case in this specific case. What Tian Lombard has, however, done with his deal with the state, Tian Lombard agreed not only with the 425A, but he agreed before that in other type of enterprises that he would act as an agent of the hawks of the DPCI. And I don't think the state can object to this, because that is even in their own admission. Now, Your Worship, just logics for a moment. We start AE Switch, and Q3 brought Tian Lombard to us. I am not good with technology, and I think you would know this by now. But the younger generation, like Hannes Lombard, is good with computers and so on, IT. So he brings Tian to the party. Accused number 2 registered. They registered me as well, being a director at that stage of Tarimix. And then I believe accused 3 was also registered. The state mentions that in the different accounts here. What they do not mention is that Tian, at that stage, registered this platform in collaboration with the Hawks. That was done in April of the year 2021, if I'm correct, if I remember correct. So 2 days before he closes, Tian closes, he's still, and I have a voice note on that phone, that he says, Louis, this is absolute nonsense. It's illegal and this and that. And I've got that on a YouTube video as well. So in the 22 months, almost 2 years, to the point where he stops the AE Switch platform, leaving a lot of people destitute with millions that he still hasn't paid out, by the way. He had to pay it out according to a court ruling that we won against him. He had to pay it out. He hasn't done it. And a lot of our JV partners will vouch to that fact. But he then allows, Louis, according to their own statement and argument, he allows us to continue for 22 months. However, by his own admission, within the first 3 or 4 months, he said to me 2 months, and then later, while he had whiskey, as he said that this is illegal. This is a pyramid scheme. And he went to television on account of whom? At that stage, we're running a mine. We are mining diamonds legally. Yet, the fraudster and criminal, Tian Lombard, says that we are criminals. So here's the problem for me that the state has in this specific bail application as well. Whilst the whole rhetoric is that Louis is a fraudster and he's taking the people's money and he's got no conscience, Louis has paid 4.5 billion out of the 4.6 billion according to the state that we've taken him. Louis has traded 13,000 diamonds, yet we have mined over 200,000 carats. And on the diamonds that couldn't be sold, and I will come to that now, how the Hawks ingeniously incarcerate us at that specific point. Having said by Humbuela on the 19th of September that we'll have a meeting, I need to say this to the court. Since the start of the investigation, I've been pleading for the Hawks to interview me. I actually went as far as taking Media 24 3 years ago, if I'm correct, to the Hawks and to their office while I was in court. And it needs to be mentioned that Walter Niedinger never ever told me about the date later on with Veronica, and I actually started losing cases without my lawyer telling me. And his argument was, Louis, I want to spare you the aggravation of worrying about things. So I've lost cases with 105 million being paid over, 65 million rand available for legal fees, yet I had a lot of scores of advocates and attorneys in this country that says that they haven't been paid. Where is the 65 million? And where is the eyes of the court when it comes to discriminating between different accused in this specific case? I am sitting incarcerated whilst I've been working, as a matter of fact, for the rights of people in Namaqualand. And the Sunday Times, if I can quote it, on the 27th of October, starts with the main article, Your Honor, and basically I don't want to belabor the point, you also have internet. But an important thing is that they do a whole article. On the one side, they have, and this is very ingenious, they have Deputy President Paul Mashatile, on whose wife I gave, and this is one of the counts here, or mentioned, is that I've given anything between 2 and 3, your high and low, that stole 52 million rand of diamonds in collaboration with Mike Bollas, stole 52 million rand of diamonds from my house in Durbanville. And he was the only person that knew exactly where it was hidden, except me, Desi, and his son, Dion. 52 million. That is the hands of the state are full of blood of our JV partners coming to this court. But what they also do, the DA, Veronica van Dijk, that started this whole mess in December 2019, because her son and her husband are diamond smugglers in Namaqualand, very well known, and I will call witnesses to that effect. The fact of the matter is that they send in a pastor, Royers, that is a right-wing Afrikaner. They send in with his one hand, very much like Mark Bollers, with a gun and then the Bible on the other, which they say I do. They send him in during this time that I'm incarcerated. And what they do is they say now they have to go and give people food in Kwainas. Whilst we have been, and I have been successfully mining, the most successful miner since De Beers, mining in excess of 200,000 carats of diamond, not the 13,000. And if the state would just look at the agreement, they will see it is a forward sales agreement, a very well-known concept within the diamond industry, where you say, we expect this kind of return. Furthermore, on the 144,000 hectares, as big as New York, to give you an idea, about 170 kilometers down the coast and about 55 kilometers inland. That is how big that is. And 26 different farms and 7 different permits, legal permits that we are mining. And those people are sitting destitute in a country and in a region where there's 95% unemployment. In Kubus, Sandrift, Sendlingsdorp, Eksteenfontein, and right through our 200 Klip Bay. People are sitting desperate. Now, the state said, and as you can see, I'm getting a bit verbal, and the fact of the matter is the state says in 5 videos out of 2,000, I react where my wife's vagina has been discussed by the most vulgar of people under the auspices of Vaughan Victor and some of the other elements that is in this liquidation, and also Dani Bruber sitting on that specific, and Dion Bruber and Veronica van Dijk. Veronica van Dijk claiming women's rights and that I shouldn't spit at a photo whilst they are doing that to my wife. Your worship, the last time I checked, I'm a man. And I've got respect for people, but I do not have respect for 10,000 people that's in cahoots with liquidators and the DPCI and the DA in Namakwa, destroying the fabric of our society, whilst we are building employment. In this article, Your Honor, it depicts exactly what is happening in this courthouse. After my incarceration, photos are taken of general public in Kwainas, stating that suddenly now for the past month and so, salaries have not been paid. What about the previous 2 years? What about the previous 5 years we've been in operation paying, and they've been struggling, Your Worship, to do a liquidation application. They had to do it in a criminal manner. And they also had to start this specific incarceration during a time that I was about to deliver 45 million rand of diamonds. And I need to touch on that, Your Worship. I don't know how the time is at the moment. Your Worship, this is how it happened. I speak to General Mbuela. Apart from the fact that I spoke to Donnie and he was going to investigate the 52 million rand that Mike Bollers, Heinlo Juster, and Jacques de Prieur stole, with Jacques de Prieur state being a witness that will say that they've stolen the 52 million rand in exactly the fashion, and also the amount of gold and the amount of diamonds that was given to him by Heinlo Juster in this process. Yet Heinlo Juster was hidden at 254 Paul Kruger Avenue with the liquidator, the initial applicant, which was working for the Army and Intelligence, Advocate Hunt on Staden. Very curious, the same person, Vaughan Victor, by Hendrik van Staden's associate, Amory Kem, has been charged with rape and went to Saki du Plessis. Sorry, Saki, if you can just wake up. And, sorry, Saki. In Saki's program, he interviewed Hendrik van Staden and Amory, where it was stated that a black lady in Henneman was tortured on video and proven by this very same liquidator. Those are the people that's attacking us in the papers whilst we are working towards a better future in Namakwa and giving work, employing people that never had work. And this is what has been happening then. And the biggest focus is that I have bought politicians, I bought police. For example, a General John Sugua. He does not exist. Well, if it does exist, Lucky Mokobela, that I will call as a witness, was the attorney that wanted 850,000 in Brooklyn because he was losing his practice and he needed money. He sent a certain John that he introduced with me, with Msholozi's daughter, with one of his wives, Ntombela, Rejoice. He introduced me as the Zuma's lawyer that is in need of help. And he then came and I said to Desi, listen, I don't have time now. Please go and give this person the 300,000 for attorney Makubela in Brooklyn. I will go further, Your Worship. This whole lie and deceit of me buying politicians. I want to ask this court and the state one question. What benefit did I get to support Msholozi? What benefit did I get to support the MK? The benefit to South Africa was that there was for the first time a real opposition in South Africa, the MK. A real opposition. The favor I did by supporting President Zuma in his hour of need in Pietermaritzburg was born from the fact that South Africa has got no opposition and everybody just says yes. So does just look at the absolute chemical explosion. When you look at Pieter Groenewald that wants a start, a start for Afrikaners, and then on the other side, the extreme in terms of liberalism, in terms of the G20 and his in the World Economic Forum. How can you run a country without an opposition? So I'm very proud of the fact that I shout Viva Msholozi, Viva MK, in this court and anywhere else. I do understand that it's, but regarding the corruption, I had no, for example, Paul Mashatile, I gave his wife, and Hein did fetch it from the back of the car, a 1.09 character H VVS1 diamond to the value of about 109,000. The circumstances were such that I was illustrating goodwill. The same as I've done to Msholozi when I sent in advance 2 cattle of Nguni. That is what Afrikaners do. That is what we are known for. Basic humanity. Since I've been in grade 1, I have been looking after, and I was sitting next to the poor kids at school because that's where my heart is. Although I've got an old South Africa hat where I still call people in the way that I shouldn't. But that is our history, and I think it is time that we as a nation become honest about who we are and what our aims and our vision and our mission is. I am very clear in terms of what my mission is. I want to say the Afrikaners and Boere, and I want to just illustrate one point of contention. Although I've had this fight with Veronica van Dijk from the DA in the court, as well as the fact that she is a smuggler, her family, and wants to stop me, she's now working with my opposition after she resigned, or then her term ended. She's working with my opposition towards the north of Kleinseer, wanting our mines as well. So that, if that's not a clear indication of the motive, I really don't know. But I've visited, and on a call of Minister Pieter Groenewald, that said to me, Louis, because of the informal king of Namaqualand, Paul Swartboy, that is recognized, you can just put in a search on Google, and remember, the Khoi and the Sun has not been recognized the whole time since the dawn of our democracy, but only have been recognized since 2019. Since 2019, the Khoi and the Sun people had recognition. So this king of Namaqualand has not been recognized, and the Premier Saul, I would like to call on him to actually make him the formal king of Namaqualand. Now, Pieter Groenewald wanted to get this Mafisa mining shareholder, one of the first mines, in fact, the first mine that we started, he wanted him as a person standing for the Freedom Front. Now, the Freedom Front and Paul Swartboy is an anomaly in terms. And what I said to Pieter Groenewald, he invited me to see Skalk Engelbrecht and Billy that will come as during the case as witnesses, called us. But once his picture and the king And I told him he will have to take a beer with this or a whiskey with this king. He walked over to the Suidlander that I've been supporting, all their Bosberade, Wynand, Kolonel Wynand de Toy from Angola farm. Now, Your Honor, if that's not an indication, I'm helping Eureka, I'm helping in Shalozi, I'm helping all the street people in Kempton Park. In fact, they're staying in one of the houses that the liquidators want to take from under them. There's 2 residential houses in Rhodesfield that we are housing people from the street. Now, I'm trying to say to you, Your Honor, if I was this person trying to buy my way into politics, buy my way in a corrupt fashion, or my wife that's a proxy for me, that's had no background in the diamond industry, but was the only one of the directors that had the guts to stand and be accountable and be honest. I want to plead with this court not to look at media alone, but look at the heart of this business. The heart of the business, delivering employment to a lot of people. And it's not for you, obviously, in the state to determine whether there's a business continuing or not. It will just be another Oppenheimer taking over the mine. The choice that I made was not to be an Oppenheimer, to involve the community, to involve everybody. And that has been a problem in Amaqualand. And therefore, 450 articles. And I can go through, and during this case, we will say, but there's no corruption. I had no benefit from any policeman. I had no benefit from any politician. I backed the radical economic transfer of the wealth of South Africa and the 0.01% of the Oppenheimers and the Ruperts, and I backed it for the Afrikaners, for the Zulu, for all the other nations in South Africa that's trying to work together, although we are still racist because of our past to a certain extent. For worship, I suppose you want to take a break at this point, but I don't know. I've got no indication of the time. Yes, yes, Your Honor. Okay. Your Honor, obviously, one can argue that I basically do what. No. Yes. 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 Okay. I suppose so. What I've just seen with Desi's case, worship, is that if you let out certain things, then you can't basically come with new facts during your argument. So I just want to cover certain things that I think is pertinent. And in Desi's bail application, and I'm going to deal with the counts and the 59 counts as far as possible. And I'm sure the state will add certain counts I'm not familiar. The 2 things I'm not familiar with, and I don't know at which stage I'm privy to that, is the different counts that the state come with. I've got 59, of which I think the 59th is against Desi, and I would like to stand in her stead there because I gave a direct instruction to go and do that. I would like to deal with just, although I don't understand, and I say that with respect, Your Worship, it's a very complicated piece of legislation, that and the Bank Act. It is 10-1, this is on Afrikaanse, it's so wyd as die Heer genade. And it's written for wealthy people. But the poker application, I just want to say the NPA, I've started by saying they've already frozen accounts in Capitec and won. Then they took the same money and maybe some other money that came in at around 70 million. They took from and they froze it in Absa account. And it's a bit strange because once we won the case with Judge Eschlopi in the Western Cape, then it was transferred to Absa, and the requirement was then that accused number 2 had to become a director of Tuiste. Okay, which then obviously explains why the timing was of such a nature that she then became a director and not initially. And she became a director, and at that stage, on the 5th of March 2020, the FIC then and the NPA froze the account. Not only that account, on the 28th of June, there was further freezing done by SARS, and they've taken 11 million rand of diamonds and jewelry from my house and cash and so on. So, and at that stage, I was knocked out as a director of Tuiste by way of a curator bonus that was appointed. And the state would like to argue that that is now an indication that this enterprise just wanted to go forward. Your worship, we had a responsibility to thousands of people at that stage, maybe not at the level of 39 or 44,000, we might argue in terms of the correct data there, but we had a responsibility towards people. If we, at that stage, just accepted, seeing that there was an application now, frozen money. First of all, it was also done ex parte for 14 days. We didn't even know what the reasons was. Eventually, we found out that that was the NPA. Now, let's look at the history of the NPA case. In terms of POCA, the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, and all these subheadings of that, the argument of the state is that this has never been canvassed before fully. Now, I argue that 3,700 pages in the Supreme Court, not in a district court, not where people are not qualified, with due respect to worship, this is not a commercial court. This is a court where every, whether you stole an apple or whether you stole 500 million, it's heard here. And hopefully this will go then to the Supreme Court after we've done this bail application. But the interesting thing to me and to this court is that on the 5th of March 2021, the freezing of accounts of Tarimix takes place. All right. But the interesting thing is that the NPA, then we had the court case, I think I'm talking under correction, the state can help again, about July of 2020. We had this court case on an urgent basis in the Pretoria High Court, if I remember correctly. I might be totally wrong now. But we had this court case, 14 months, and as far as I know, the Supreme Court should deliver judgment at least within 3 months. In our case, however, the Judge Makosi only delivered a judgment 14 months later, in September 2020. Now, Your Worship, I want to ask the state, in what situation that leaves us? I've got a custodian responsibility, and the rest of the workers and the rest of the directors, to these thousands of people that moan and groan because their money that's been frozen. Now, the state might argue, yes, you got in 4.6 billion and you paid out but you promised 9 billion. Your Worship, if all your cash in a business and your till is stolen tonight, and you want to sell apples tomorrow morning, it is pretty difficult. And the state will then argue, no, rather capitulate, rather give up, because you are busy with illegal stuff. But 3,700 pages of the state's case in the NPA POCA application did not succeed. What was the counts in there? As a matter of fact, as the state would know, they don't only refer to direct POCA legislation, and also they included things like terrorism, or a feel of, Louis, you are sponsoring the white people of South Africa, you only have Afrikaans. And the whole purpose of this is to have Afrikaans people that has had the benefit of a lot of advantage in South Africa and make them partners of other people, very much like a farmer getting another farmer in to get a piece of land and teach him how to farm. That is what we've been doing. We won the POCA application. Here the state comes with exactly the same arguments, as though this is a novice intervention, the first time that they've ever seen, and they do not mention the NPA. Unfortunately, with respect, Attorney van Heerden did not refer to the terms of that judgment. It wasn't only a judgment, it was a sound piece of investigation over 14 months of the best brains in South Africa, senior advocates on the side like we've got now, and the senior advocates, John Suttner, on our side. So yes, the state might argue, yes, Louis, there was new evidence. What new evidence? We've been mining more and more successfully. With this vision that they haven't been able to do because they do not have 40 million or 100 or 200 million to enter the industry. The level of entry is just set too high, and nobody, no Zama will ever, they will still be chased out at Stilfontein. The police will still not give them food because it is right. They shouldn't mine illegally. Why are people mining illegally? They're mining illegally because they don't have food in their mouth. And in Germany, that would be called Mundraub. If somebody would steal food, then they would be excused because it's enough food for them and their family alone. On the contravention of poker, I cannot agree with the state. In any of those statements, this has been fully canvassed. And the very interesting thing, and if this is now called justice, your worship, at this stage, the NPA appealed and they kept the plus minus 100 million. It's not only the 72 million, it's 8 million from Ronell's account and 2.7 from my account and a few others. About 100 million plus now the money taken by the curator bonus. That money is still sitting there, although NPA has abandoned their claim on the money. So who walked in? The next predator, the liquidator. And that was done whilst the money of the NPA was still under preservation. So there's no respect for preservation of money in South Africa. So that has been canvassed fully. The appeal has not been heard. And you must know, September 2022, the state indicated that they're going to appeal. That appeal has not taken place in court. It was supposed to take place around now. The timing of all this shows to me it is the same that has taken place on the day of my incarceration, where I came from the business rescue practitioner with General Mboela telling me a month before that we're going to have a meeting. They've never interviewed me and they've never had me on a 418 with Magistrate Engelbrecht. Never. I never had the opportunity to state my case because the state is prolonging and playing the game that they're playing with Msholozi for 22 years. And that was also the reason why I got involved, because it is so very unfair to have a person calling him a person that does Stalingrad, but that is what the state does, and also with the poker application. Money laundering. Your worship, as I stated before, the diamond industry is a cash business. Now, if you take away the cash, a lot of people in South Africa, the 800 dealers in South Africa that does business in the diamond industry will be out of business. Then they will have maybe a 10%, 15, 20% profit on their business. Okay. No ways you can profitably, and that's not how the Oppenheimers made their money. They made their money through dollars in a safe. That's how they made their money. And diamonds are being sold in dollars. Money laundering, and may I just explain, initially I drew money at casinos and I made it very clear in the 2000. And during that time, in October 2020, I saw the hawks on the 5th floor of Emperor's sitting while I was changing money, and sometimes I lost, and sometimes, I would go in, and there was a specific time that I got carried away, and I will get to that. But if you look at, I walked to the state. In other words, I walked to the hawks, and there was a policeman, Vuzi, and he referred me to General Matsepe, and I think this is an important name at the head office of the police, that I've since then been seeing at least once a month, once in 2 months, and walking from one floor of the Wagthuis police head office to the other, looking for reasons why the hawks and DPCI are chasing me and monitoring me. I walked to them. One of the things about me, your worship, is I run to the fire. I never run away from it. And therefore, I've done exactly the same. I wrote a letter every time I left the country. I wrote a letter to the hawks, even to the president, saying that I'm leaving and I'm coming back at a certain point in time. When I deal with the question of dollars, I suppose the whole country got to know this thing about offset and culpa. Whether I want to defraud the South African population of their money, and in particular the Afrikaner. The 2000 videos will tell you that I did not. Don't look at the 5 videos where I got the Muri. Sorry, that's exactly where I go wrong. My apologies to the sport. This is typical Namaqualand, and I do things like that. But I apologize to the sport. The 5 videos where I lose my cool, because of this fight that I'm into. I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. I don't want JV partners to lose their money. That we mustn't, with the Bank Act, try and cripple everybody of the general public that want to try and get into the diamond industry, and also try and put the mineral wealth of South Africa in the hands of ordinary people. So I need to explain also if you look at a lot of these specific companies that's mentioned on page 6, 7, and so on, the different companies, and then you start with the scheme. I must say that a NOLA score, Walter Niedinger has been at all points in time a proxy for the JV partners in that specific, and the shareholding that was held by me and then later by Des. So I know Walter has never been, and that specific case is currently in the courts, and although the argument has been done, there's no judgment as far as the NOLA score shareholding is concerned. So I'm not sure whether I am a director of a NOLA score. I do, however, and this is important to this court, that DESI concluded an agreement in the name of Nama Diamonds, not to be confused with Nama Stones, on insistence of Marius van Tonder that we visited on the day of our incarceration. I will just remind the court that at that point in time, I told my security, because I've arranged with Marius van Tonder, the BRP, I've held back, obviously, the diamonds. I tried to sell it at Rosebank, and I phoned Marius and I phoned Basil from HOD, and I said, we cannot get the prices at this moment that HOD will give us, so I'll wait. HOD claimed that we had to deliver the diamonds, or Marius van Tonder, the BRPs of Christa Wiese, argued that we had to supply the diamonds, the 45 million rand of diamonds. We had to supply to HOD, but we have to wait. Now, we couldn't. Any business that's dependent on the money that cannot wait forever. So at the time that we came up to Joburg, I've sent our security up to bring the diamonds with the knowledge of Marius van Tonder. So they stopped us from delivering the 7 weeks of diamonds. And we delivered them to Marius on that day, the 4 parcels. We share 12.5%, 87% ours, 0.5, and they get 12.5%. And we then brought it and we put it on the table. I know the state is arguing that they don't have a legal license because one of the accused withdrew the license, although she committed herself not to do that. I need to point out to the state that with the permits of the mine, there's no necessity to have a dealer's license present when you deal with the diamonds from the mine. It is mine production, and there's permits and it's legal, and we are an agent, obviously, of those diamonds. Now, Your Worship, yeah.